Folks, you see the guy in front of you? That's the current president, dictator, strongman, thug, whatever you want to call him, of Chad. But this guy was, he was fairly limited up until about 2004. Because Chad is one of the poorest countries, was one of the poorest countries on the face of the earth. That was up until 2004, where oil was discovered in Chad. And all of a sudden, Chad looked like it was going to get out there as far as its gross domestic product because of oil exports. Only problem was Chad is landlocked. And it had to find a way to be able to get its oil out to the coast where it could be shipped, obviously, around the world. Okay, well, the United States, along with the World Bank and 3 oil companies, went in and said, hey, look, you got the oil, but you got no way of getting it out unless you work with us. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to build you a pipeline through Cameroon, which is the country that borders Chad. And it's going to go all the way out to a port. And we're going to be able to load up, obviously, oil tankers at the port. So you will be able to get all of this oil revenue. We're also going to make a deal to make you some, low interest loans. And the United States, as a sweetener, kicked in somewhere around $20 million worth of foreign aid. We're going to do all that if you agree that you're not just going to glom all the money, but you're going to take, a good portion of the money. We know you're going to take some of it, but at least, let's say, call it half of the money and invest it in your country, hospitals, roads, social programs for your people, since your people are so poor. Okay, so, good deal for everybody. He agrees to the deal. They build the pipeline. Oil starts getting pumped out. Money starts coming in. And when the money started coming in, he went back to the World Bank, to the United States, and 2 of the 3 oil companies, and said, guess what? The deal is off. Told the 2 oil companies they had 24 hours to get the hell out of his country. Obviously told the United States he wasn't going to honor the deal, and told the World Bank the same thing. But it was the 3rd oil company that created this problem. The 3rd oil company was ExxonMobil. And they told this guy that he needed to tear up the previous deal, sign a new deal with them, and he could do whatever he wanted to do with the oil revenue money that he was going to be paid. I.e., instead of hospitals and roads and social programs for his people, he could boost his army and buy guns, okay? Become more of a military regime. So obviously that's what he wanted to do all along. That's what he did. The person that was in charge of ExxonMobil was Rex Tillerson. This guy. I picked this story up on the Rachel Maddow show, so I'm just going to play the whole clip. And then I'll make a few comments at the end.
What he really wanted for that money, what he really wanted to spend it on, was guns. And that was prohibited by the deal. And so he threw the deal out the window. Forget the deal. Forget the World Bank and the United States that brokered the deal. You know, forget you. The deal's off. Or at least we're going to do a new deal. And on August 26th, 2006, the dictator of Chad told these two oil companies, told Chevron and Petronas, two of the three oil companies that were in on this giant deal, he told them they had to get out of Chad. In fact, he gave them 1 day to get out of Chad. He said they had to be gone within 24 hours. But it's interesting, he only kicked out 2 of the 3 companies that were pumping oil in his country. The other company, they could stay. Really? Yes. And say it with me now. That company was Exxon. Because the new deal that he was making, after throwing out this old deal, the new deal he wanted to make was really just with Exxon. Exxon basically told the dictator in Chad, hey, listen, we're not the World Bank. We're not the United States. Do a deal with us. Right? You get oil money from us pumping out your oil. We're not going to tell you where to spend it, how to spend it. Screw the deal that you had to make with these other people. You just deal with us. We'll get the oil. You can have the cash. Call the deal off. You can, pay off whatever loans you agreed to as part of this deal. We're happy for your business. We're Exxon. We'll take your oil. We will give you money for your oil. And then once you've got that money, you get your guns or whatever it is you want. That'll be the term of the deal. And so that was the new deal. And the United States of America was left standing on the sideline. Because what's the United States of America going to do in this instance? I mean, they were up against the Death Star. And Steve Cole points out in his book, Private Empire, that the total of U.S. aid in Chad, the total of American aid that we spend in that country, foreign aid and military aid even, the total less than $20 million. While Exxon is paying them more than $500 million a year in oil revenue. So yeah, guess who gets to make the deals in that country? And there are humanitarian concerns there. There's an opportunity there to help one of the 10 poorest nations on Earth in one of the most volatile and dangerous regions on Earth. Screw that, are you kidding? Move over, Bacon, now there's something meatier. And that whole Exxon move, that all happened in 2006. That happened right after this guy took over as the head of Exxon. This deal in Chad. Screw the US government. Screw what the United States of America is trying to accomplish in that part of Africa, in that critical part of the world. Chad borders Libya and Nigeria and Sudan, right? Screw whatever that little country means to the United States, and screw whatever that other little country, the United States, is trying to do here. Get out of the way. There's money to be made here for Exxon. And now, more than a dozen years into its new life as an oil-producing nation, if you look at the Human Development Index of nations, Chad ranks 4th from the bottom out of 188 countries. Remember I said their GDP quintupled? Didn't do much for the people. 4th from the bottom. There's 188 countries ranked. They're 185th. Chad is also officially considered to be a failed state. Chad remains one of the 10 poorest nations on Earth, remains one of the most corrupt nations on Earth. In fact, the single poorest inhabited region on Earth is a part of Chad. A region in Chad that's called Salamat. See down in the lower east, southeast corner there? Salamat, the poorest region on the face of the globe that is inhabited by humans. And Salamat is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Exxon's largest oil field in Chad. But Exxon is doing great in Chad. Their latest corporate report says that just in that one field in Chad that's next to the poorest region on the face of the earth, they're producing 29 million barrels of oil. And under the new deal that Exxon cut, that oil flow out of the ground in Chad, which has been so good for Exxon, it has led to Chad's dictator spending at least $4 billion on weapons. And that is something that the United States government saw coming and tried to prevent, because it is not in the interest of the United States. The reason it happened anyway is because it was in the interests of Exxon. And Exxon has its own foreign policy that is frequently at odds with the United States. And that foreign policy is the only foreign policy with which our new nominee for Secretary of State has any experience whatsoever. Today, the transition made it official that the president-elect has chosen Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson as his nominee to be the next Secretary of State of America. There was this hilarious period today when there was all this breathless reporting that former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice and former Defense Secretary Bob Gates were both vocally on board with this controversial nomination. Wow, maybe it's not that controversial after all. Maybe it's not that weird that the CEO of Exxon would get a job like this. After all, Condi Rice and Bob Gates say they are on board. There was this hilarious period today between the start of that reporting and the moment when everybody finally Googled it and noticed, oh yeah, Condoleezza Rice and Bob Gates are both consultants for Exxon now. They're both on the Exxon payroll.
Is that what you call draining the swamp? Or did Exxon get their money's worth from the consulting fees that they paid Condoleezza Rice and Bob Gates for?
In fact, Politico reported not long ago that the whole reason the Exxon CEO even got a first look from the Trump transition, even got his first introduction to President-elect Donald Trump, is because Condoleezza Rice and Bob Gates made that introduction. They work for Exxon. Do you think Exxon's getting its money worth for their consulting contract with Condi Rice and Bob Gates? They just got them a Secretary of State. So that's our new nominee for Secretary of State. In the wake of the formal announcement, there was obviously a lot of attention today to Rex Tillerson's exceedingly close relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin. There was also starting to be some attention to the fact that while American soldiers were fighting and dying in Iraq to try to stand up an Iraqi government that could hold that country together after we deposed Saddam, while American soldiers were fighting and dying in Iraq to stand up an Iraqi government that can hold that country together, Exxon defied an explicit request from the U.S. government to please only work with the government in Baghdad. Exxon responded to that request from the U.S. government by saying, screw that. In effect, who cares what American soldiers are dying for? We're going to do our own deal, our own oil deal with just the Kurdish government in the northern part of Iraq, because that may be terrible for America, but that's easier for us. In the wake of the president-elect nominating this man who has never worked anywhere else in his life other than Exxon, there are a lot of interesting questions now as to whether he'll be confirmed. There are concerns about how much his life's work has had him working alongside and helping America's adversaries. But I think there's another point here that deserves a look, which is that what his history really is foreign. Foreign to the United States. I mean, the case the incoming administration is trying to make for Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State is that he's somehow perfectly suited to being America's top diplomat because he has been operating in other countries for a long time, like as if he and Exxon have been some sort of private sector adjunct to the work of the Foreign Service and the State Department and the U.S. government. So clearly it'll be easy for him to step into running the State Department. But what he has actually been, in country after country, in story after story, in war after war, in deal after deal, what he's actually been really is an adversary of the United States. Exxon has its own foreign policy. That doesn't mean it's a good place to get training in how to do America's foreign policy. They compete with America. I mean, in lots of places, Exxon is anti-American. Exxon under Rex Tillerson has frequently and repeatedly and reliably acted actively worked to oppose the interests of the United States of America in countries large and small, even in countries where we are actively at war, even in countries most Americans couldn't find on a map. No nominee for Secretary of State has ever been rejected by the U.S. Senate, nor has any Secretary of State nomination ever been withdrawn since the Secretary of State position was created in 1789. Then again, we've also never tried to put anybody in that job whose experience for the job is a long list of him defying and opposing and undermining and fighting against the United States of America. That we've never tried before. But apparently that's what we're going for now. A lot of people are saying Rex Tillerson's nomination won't pass. And it's too controversial. I think it will pass. I think Republicans will take a look at the patriotic implications of this and the partisan implications of this, and they will decide they will go with partisanship. If I'm proven wrong, I'll be delighted. But in this case, looking at somebody who has worked against the United States of America will freak them out less than the prospect of angering or alienating the incoming president of their own party. Mark my words.
Follow the money. Notice, she said that the dictator in Chad spent $4 billion on weapons. Exactly who did he buy those weapons from? Dollars to donuts that he bought them from us. So the Exxon guy not only got his deal cut, but he probably used his relationships with the weapons industries across the world, and particularly in the U.S., to feather the Chad dictator's path to buying up all the weapons that he wanted. This guy damn sure is un-American, and he damn sure should not be confirmed as Secretary of State. They need to kick his ass to the curb. Make sure you keep those sanctions on Russia in place so that that $500 billion oil deal can't be done. And we need to start taking action against ExxonMobil, because they damn sure have taken actions against the United States of America.